And I'm Gus.
And you're watching Cashed Out Cars, and in this video we're going to be going over common problems that come up with Porsche 944s.
So I've had this car for a couple years now, and we pretty much ran through all the big maintenance things, other than the clutch, that usually get done. So in this video we'll be taking you through what maintenance you should expect to do when you get a car like this, and some of the other common problems that might come up.
So guys, now that we have the hood popped open here, we're going to go over common problems with the engine and powertrain. And one of the first problems that comes up that's really a maintenance item is the timing belt.
So the timing belt is pretty easy to inspect to see if you need to replace it. It's this plastic cover right here, and it just pops off, and you can get right up into the belts. You can twist them to see how the tension feels. I believe the timing belt, the general guideline is you should be able to twist it approximately 90 degrees just with your fingers and average strength. And the balance belt, which will also be here, you should change them together, and that belt you should be able to turn 180 degrees. So if they feel excessively loose or tight, it might be time to retension them. If they feel, or if they look like they have a lot of wear on them, if the edges are chewed up or there's a lot of shavings or rubber missing, then it's definitely time to replace them for that reason.
So what happens with these engines if the timing belt breaks?
If the timing belt breaks, you're going to want to put a new engine in.
Yeah, so these are interference engines, unlike the Superior Miata that we also have on this channel. So make sure your timing belt's in good shape, because you'll have a valve crash and basically need a new engine if it does break. Another thing that comes up on 944s, although not this one specifically because this is a base model 944, is the cam chain tensioners fail. And that's basically going to cause a pretty similar problem. You're going to potentially have cracked heads or skip timing and ruin your engine. And that happens on 944Ss and S2s. So if you're looking at those cars, look into articles online, and those will show you how to check that. But that is another maintenance item that, when it fails, causes big problems.
So these cars were in the era where cruise control was a new luxury, and pretty much all of them failed for one reason or another. As you can see, my cruise control here is professionally zip tied because it had failed long ago, and it's just kind of a pain to disconnect them the right way.
So what else goes wrong with these things, since they are old cars?
Pretty much all the rubber is gonna go downhill since they're so old. So you can see the vacuum lines have been redone, and that's nice. A lot of the rubber fuel lines have been replaced. I suggest you do the same. Miscellaneous stuff that you probably wouldn't think of, such as your washer fluid lines, ours still don't work. You're going to be replacing pretty much all of that type of stuff soon. As you can see, some of the rubber that hasn't been replaced includes the motor to raise the headlights, and that's on its last legs. All of these tubes have been replaced multiple times. So all that stuff will definitely add up, and you'll want to take it into account when you're thinking about maintenance costs.
So along the same lines as all that other rubber stuff cracking, other rubber stuff that cracks are brake lines and coolant hoses. You had some problems with the coolant hose, didn't you?
I had a big problem with the coolant hose. So the alternator sits back in here, and the blades on the front actually chopped right through my coolant hose. It wasn't necessarily a degradation issue, it was definitely hitting those blades, and the blade slowly wore through it until coolant was dumping everywhere, and I was smoking on the way back home. Other than that, we replaced the brake lines. Definitely suggest getting some nice brake lines like these. They'll last you a lot longer than the cheapos, and they're not too much more expensive, especially if you consider the time it's going to take to replace them a few times instead of once.
Some additional problems under the hood here that come up are motor mounts often go bad. Once again, that's a rubber wear item. It's hard to see here, but the motor mount's right down there, right in the center of the frame. And power steering racks also tend to leak and come with some additional problems, so definitely check those over. Another problem with power steering is you're not going to have the road feel that you do with a manual rack. But if you do have a power steering rack, definitely look at it for leaks because, like I said, they tend to leak. Another thing, going back to the vacuum line issues with this car, is if you do start to get vacuum leaks, they are a little bit tricky to diagnose because these cars are pre-OBD2, so it's a lot harder to get diagnostic information from your car when stuff starts to go wrong. So a couple last things under the hood here before we shut it is when cruise control fails, there's a computer that goes along with it and a servo that fail, and these are very expensive to replace. So that's something that could go wrong, and if you want cruise control to work, could be expensive to fix. And finally, and it's not necessarily a weak point, but they will have to be replaced eventually, is the clutches in these cars are quite pricey, and when they fail, you will obviously have to replace them, and it's going to cost a lot of money. So I was looking at clutch kits. I don't know if you looked at them too much, but I was looking at prices, and I was seeing around $500 for a kit. It's a lot.
Yep, clutches aren't cheap. Luckily they don't go too often.
Yeah, luckily they don't go too often. I am going to do a video comparing maintenance costs on this versus the Miata, but
no fun to compare them.
No fun to compare them for him. But a clutch kit for a Miata is around $100 to $140. So maintenance costs are definitely high on this car, but like I said, I have a spreadsheet that will compare the two in terms of maintenance. So what do we have up top here on this fine car?
So we got a roof up here, particularly a sunroof or a moonroof. No clue what the difference is.
Sunroof. Moonroof slide in our glass.
Cool. So a lot of these cars came with powered sunroofs, and a lot of those went very poorly. Luckily, they're very easy to depower. My car has been depowered, and as you can see, now you just take the latches that hold it shut, turn them around, and they sit in the grooves, and your sunroof tilts up.
Groovy.
Couple more latches up front, and you can take the whole thing out.
So this car did have a power sunroof at one point, and it failed?
Exactly. I don't think it's something that anybody would want to replace because it's super easy to transfer them over. You don't need to buy another roof or anything. You just take the old parts out, get some weight reduction, and you're good to go.
Alright, so now we're moving on to the interior of the car.
So I was extremely fortunate to be able to find a car with two things that you want to look for. One is a working odometer, because a lot of the times in the early cars, the button, which is right here, to reset the trip meter would actually be a self-destruct button if you're moving. So pressing that when you're moving would shear the gears in the odometer, and you'd no longer track the mileage. The other thing that you want to be looking for when you buy one of these is records which are complete enough that you can see the miles go up steadily, to ensure that the odometer hasn't been replaced, because like I said, that's a big issue with these cars. So a lot of the times you'll see like a $800 944 with some big engine issue, but it only has 10,000 miles. It probably has 210,000 miles.
How's that dash looking on this thing?
So the dash is probably the worst part of the interior. Every single 944 has had these dashes in their lives unless they've been sitting in a garage. A lot of the times recovering them isn't worth it because it's a pain to get the dash off. So you'll see cheap plastic covers on them which really don't look very nice. We're planning on redoing the dash here, and that's pretty much the price of material, which can vary a lot depending on what you want to cover it in. And covering it in vinyl can leave a haze on your windshield because it's gassing off all the time. So you'll definitely want to think about whether you can deal with the cracks like I have for a couple of years, or if you want to look at recovering that with some nice material.
The very last thing that we want to talk about in this video is this glass on the hatch separating from the frame, and that often becomes a problem after you install new gas struts on your hatch, because then there's just too much power and the window separates from the frame, which you don't want.
Yep. So because it has such a huge piece of glass on the back and that makes up the entire hatch, a lot of times, like you said, the power of the struts will cause that to separate. Another issue is, since it's so big, you could easily press down from one side and twist the whole thing. So you want to make sure you keep even pressure down when you're closing it, and don't let the big piece of glass twist, because that can't be good.
That's going to wrap up this video. The final problem with these cars is that they're not Mazda Miatas. In all seriousness, these cars are pretty reliable if you find one that's been well maintained and taken care of. If you do have to do a lot of the maintenance yourself, it will get a little bit pricey, but I will have a video sort of outlining that on the channel as well. So with all that said, don't be scared of these cars because of these problems, because they are good cars. And let me know if there are any other problems that you guys know of down in the comments below. With all that said, thank you so much for watching. Like this video if you liked it, and subscribe for more, and I hope you stick around for the next one. Take care.